Um, as I was saying, the customer portal is part of our fuller e-commerce suite called Webtelligence that integrates directly into North49. But because of the way it communicates, we are able to um, separate it out, I guess, and sell it as a standalone product that allows customers to self-serve, and we'll go through all the capabilities that it can do. Um, so just run through a few slides to introduce the concepts, and then I'll get into a live presentation of the product itself. Feel free to enter questions into the Q&A, and I prefer to get them there because that way it gets saved in the transcript of the recording later that I can refer to. If it goes into the chat, we kind of lose that. So please, if you have questions, pop them in there. I'll try to monitor that as we go along, but it's just me today, so I may forget to check that from time to time, but at the end I will go through that and see if there's any questions. So let's just carry on with this. You notice this badge down here called the Sage Tech Partner Plus. North49 is in the Sage 300 world in North America known as an endorsed partner. What that means is our products are sold directly by Sage through their Sage partner network. So you wouldn't purchase it directly from us. You would get it through a Sage reseller, or a Sage reseller. You will get that directly from Sage. So the customer portal is sort of an answer to a need that arose. Well, it's been arising for a long time now, but the pandemic in the past couple of years really just accelerated people's need to get online, and to get online quickly. And as I mentioned earlier, we always had our e-commerce platform, Webtelligence, which allowed people to get online and sell products and interact with customers through a customer portal. But the get online fast part was the tricky bit, because it takes time to build out a web store. You have to design the pages, the navigation, the user experience, all that stuff, whereby the customer portal, it's a packaged product, and we can deliver that in a matter of a couple of hours. And in fact, the administration dealing through Sage probably takes longer than it does for us to set the portal up. And so all of these sort of consumer behaviors that started to develop throughout the pandemic are sticking around. People became accustomed to doing things in a certain way, you know, on my time, not yours. I want to do things when I want to do things. So it's continuing to grow that way. And there was always already a transition toward that. People were demanding those kind of things. You know, you experience it in your personal life, and now you want to see it in your business life as well, right? You want the same kind of capabilities in your business life. So that's what we're doing here. So that's what customers expect: 24/7 access to their information, the ability to place orders, the ability to check their statuses of orders, to look up invoices, reprint those invoices, to pay those invoices online. And it's become an expectation for customers. And really, there's a huge benefit to the merchant as well by doing this, because you offload quite a bit of that burden for entering a payment transaction, let's say, inside of Sage, to get that all done. I mean, there's quite a few steps that have to happen there. If you're taking it by credit card, you know, meaning going out to the payment gateway and entering the details and posting that information into Sage and all that stuff. So there's a huge benefit to the merchant by taking on a customer portal and exposing that to their customers and letting them do a lot of that work. So save a lot of time, save a lot of paper, save a lot of effort, get paid faster, all benefits to the merchant by deploying a customer portal. Now, it could be something as simple as a click to pay link that you embed on your invoice document, or maybe in the body of an email, and I'll show you an example of this. That's the most basic implementation of the customer portal. It just, you know, pay here, click here to pay. And when you make it easy for customers to pay, not surprisingly, they pay you a little bit faster. So getting your money quicker is another big benefit of deploying a customer portal with payment processing attached to it. So that's the simplest form. But then, of course, there's the full portal that exposes everything about the customer portal to that customer. So all the documents that you as a merchant want to expose to your customers, all those documents that sit inside of accounts receivable, are available for you to serve up and let your customers look at them. Now, you can turn those on and off, of course, so that's up to you, and I'll talk about all that once we get into the product, but there is pretty wide-reaching capability within the customer portal. So North49 developed the customer portal several years ago, and it's been out there for quite a while. It's been, like I said, embedded in our e-commerce solution called Webtelligence for many years. So it's been through the mill. It's you know, it's been through its paces. We've been adding capabilities to it consistently, and we'll continue to do so. Recently, North49 was acquired by a company called Evo Payments. And so what that means is now on the back end, we can complete that whole cycle. We can now be the payment processor that allows you to accept credit cards, or if you're in the US ACH payments and all those kind of things through a merchant account that would be established with Evo Payments. So that's now a complete solution front to back that handles all of that. We even have a quick order entry form on the customer portal itself, and I'll show you an example about how that works. So it's kind of cool. It's not a web store. I wouldn't go so far as to call it that, but it does allow B2B customers to place an order, and it does need them to have some familiarity with what they want to place. And as I go through that demonstration, you'll see what that's all about. Now, I should point out that the customer portal itself has no data of its own. It reads data live out of Sage 300 on demand. And so in order to do so, we do consume a Sage user license. So do keep that in mind. If you don't have a spare one lying around, which most people would not, you'd need one in order for the portal to communicate with Sage 300. And in the later versions of Sage 300, you can assign specific users to specific user licenses inside of Sage, so you can reserve it for the portal so it never goes down. Because what you don't want to have happen is you create this portal for your customers and then they try to log in, but they can't because there's no available user licenses. So best to avoid that and have one exclusively available for the customer portal. There is an administrative back end to the portal that allows you to call it configure, but make the settings for the customer portal that you want to expose to your customers. But it's not the kind of thing that you have to go into on a regular basis. Once it's set up, it does what it does. You don't have to babysit it. So that's really what it's all about. Again, it's a live read of data, a live feed of data. So as long as we have a component we call connect, and as long as that component is running, we're all good. We will connect and we will allow your customers to self-serve. So enough talk, let's have a look at the actual product. So first things first, let's talk about that click to pay. So in click to pay, it's really just the ability to embed a link in your invoice document, perhaps right on the crystal form that comes out of Sage, or in an email. We've mocked it up here inside of a Word document just to show you what it's all about. So really it's just pointing to the URL where your portal would reside, and that will be a subdomain of your current domain. So your customers know that they're in a familiar place. They're not being farmed out to some phishing site. We feed it the customer number and the document number. And by doing so, and when the customer clicks on that, they are then exposed to, sorry, that popped up on a wrong screen here. Here it is. It pops up this click to pay window. So you notice that slight delay there? That was us taking that customer number and that invoice document number and reading into Sage and making sure that, validating that it is for this customer and that is a valid invoice and there is still an outstanding balance to pay on that invoice document. And we filled in the customer comfort, who is the customer's name and the invoice date. So all we had was this and this. We filled in the rest. I actually probably had the dollar amount as well. Now, depending upon what your merchant account is set up to do, you can take a credit card payment or you can take an ACH payment. So from a customer's perspective, all they have to do now is hit that pay that invoice button. We're going to pop up the payment gateway window where they can enter their card details. We'll fire off that transaction off into the payment gateway. It will return back to us a post back, which we will then append into a Sage AR receipt batch. So there's nothing that you as the merchant has to do to complete that transaction other than to post that batch, and it's done. It's reconciled against the customer, the document, and the bank. It all gets done automatically. So you can see where the time that it would normally take you to maybe contact the customer, get a credit card details, enter those card details into the payment gateway, take the resulting transaction and post that into Sage to complete that transaction. All that goes away. It's now handled by the customer automatically, and you didn't have to do anything to make that transaction happen. You notice there's a couple of other things on here too, which I'll just point out before I get into the full portal. We do have the ability to take a prepayment, and that prepayment can be on an order, it can be on a quote, or it can be an unallocated cash payment into the customer's account that you would then apply at some point in the future. So that might be handy if you're taking, say, a deposit on a project or something like that. So, and also you may have noticed that this bit here is editable. This is a feature that you can turn on and off. Now, in most cases, you'll probably just want the customer to pay the complete document or don't pay it. If they've got a dispute with it, let's resolve the dispute first, but pay that document, because part of the reason why people are getting this portal is to offload some of that reconciliation burden and the transaction processing thing. So you don't want to create work for yourself by allowing someone to partial pay. There are obviously business cases where it might make sense to do that, so it's an option that you can turn on and off. So that's the click to pay part. Again, very simple implementation. If that's as far as you want to go, perfect. That works just fine. Let's get to the basic login page here. Let me talk about a couple of things on this. So this would be the login page that your customers would see. Now, of course, up here, that's going to be your logo. And if you want to have some messaging on there, you can. This is just an image file. In the admin backend, which I can show you a little bit later, you just select that file and that's where it's going to show up. You also control this welcome message here. So you type that into the backend as well, whatever you want to portray to your customers, that's what's going to show up here. And of course, that's going to be your contact details there. We do currently support both English and French. We will change all of the labels that we control. Now, of course, you control this, so unless you type that in French, it's not going to show up in French, but everything we control gets changed to French. And from a customer perspective, excuse me, if they selected French, we will attempt to drop a cookie onto their machine if they allow it, and that means that next time they log in, what they will see will be in French. Now, you on the back end have the option of choosing your default language for the portal that they would see automatically as they logged in here. So in my case, of course, that's English. For customers to get registered to use the portal, there's a couple different ways this can happen. If you want, you can control it completely, which means that you have to create the customers, you have to send them their credentials to log in, and then they could probably on the first login change that to a password that only they know and you don't know, because it should be a secure and secret password. So that's one way. That's the most work method for you. And again, part of the reason why people get a portal is to offload some work. They don't want to create work for themselves. They're trying to lessen their workload. So you can let your customer self-register, and they click that register button, and then they'll fill in this detail that they see here. So first of all, they'll give themselves a username. They do need to know their AR customer number, and they do need to know some bit of information about their AR account. And there's about 5 different questions that we can ask that are about that AR account they would have to know. So that gives us some measure of security that the people that are asking for access to this account are who they say they are. Now, you can have more than one user on any one AR account. So you can have multiple people at your customer logging in to do business on behalf of that customer. So 2 things can happen at this point. So number one, they can fill in this stuff, say register, and then they can wait for you to authorize them. Again, that's work for you. The other way to do it is to give them automatic access. So if they answer this skill testing question correctly, we can grant them immediate access, again, at your option. If you want to turn that switch on, we can do that. So if they answer the question correctly, they can get immediate access and start doing things for that account, like paying their invoices or looking up invoices, whatever. When that happens, we can, and again, your option, send an email to the email address that sits on the AR account to inform them that this user has requested access or has been given access to your account. And if for some reason they didn't want that to be the case, you can go into the admin side and turn them off. Pretty simple to do. So that's how folks get registered. Pretty straightforward, least work method. Let them self-register, go in automatically, and they're done. And incidentally here, you see this pay invoice button. If they wanted to click on that, they're going to get a similar screen up that was like that click to pay screen. They just enter the document number, how much they want to pay, click go, will validate, and they can pay it without having to log in. But let's have a look at the full portal and see what features that presents to them. So the first thing that could possibly happen, and again, at your discretion, this is yours to turn on and off, is this pop-up message that goes to a specific customer. And let me show you where that's maintained here. Let me find my instance of Sage 300, and I just want to bring these 2 together if I can do that. Let's see, can I? There we go. Let's just add one to the same thing. So inside of Sage 300, in the customer record, and this is customer 1600, let's just call them up here. As soon as he wakes up. So in Bandpan, under comments, and this sits in every AR customer account, we've designated a comment type called web. And this is that message that you saw pop up on the screen here, right? So the first thing the portal is going to do is when somebody logs in is going to check in AR and see if there's a comment type web. And if there is, we're going to pop it up on the screen here. So you get to communicate one-on-one with that customer. And when the customer clicks OK, I'll talk about that in a second. What happens is, let me just navigate away and back to this. we're going to change that to acknowledge. So we know the customer has seen this. So in this way, you can communicate one-on-one with the customer and actually keep a string of all those communications. And when that acknowledged has been flagged, you know that they've seen it. So that's one way to communicate one-on-one with a particular customer. This one, we call it a broadcast message. And that goes to every customer that logs in. And this you control in the portal admin side. And I can show you a quick example of that when we pop into that side once we're through the customer facing side of this. So this might be a policy change or anything that you want to communicate globally to all of your customers. And again, when they click OK, we'll flag it for that particular user so it doesn't keep coming back to annoy them as they try to go through and do things on the portal itself. So the portal has three, call it iterations or subscription levels. There's the standard portal, which includes the account activity, the view transactions, view orders, and contact us. And then when you add on the online payments, you're going to add on these three icons here for the pay account, prepayment, and manage credit cards. And then the quick order entry is simply this one. It allows customers to place orders online. It'll end up automatically into Sage order entry for you. So that's the three different levels of subscription, and these are all published on our website. You can see them with all the pricing and all that stuff is there as well for you. So just quickly go through all these and show you, just give you a quick look at what these are all about. So this one is just summary level information about the account. So my last few invoices, my last few payments, you know, basic stuff like that, how much I owe you. Where the real meat of it comes in is when you start looking at all of the different transaction types that we can expose or you can expose to your customer should you choose to do so. So these are all the document types that exist inside of accounts receivable that we can display for you. You can turn these off in the back end. It's a simple checkbox. If you don't charge interest, you don't want it to appear, you check that box off, it does not appear. So this is only going to show those document types that you want to display to your customers. Now, when you display a bunch of these types, your customer can filter it down to only those documents that they're interested in looking at, and further filter that down to ones that still have an outstanding balance on them. And when they see these documents, they can actually click on them and drill down. First of all, get an on-screen display of what that looks like, and then get a printed version that they can print out, save to a PDF, do whatever they want to do with that document. And again, we do denote it as a web copy. So if it doesn't look exactly like your invoice that you ship out of Sage 300, at least they're going to know that this is just, you know, the one I drew off of the web. But it will have all the proper information on it. Now, if you think about this kind of like a crystal form, but it's just in an HTML format, we're just taking data that we read live out of Sage, painting it on the screen in the place that it needs to be to portray an invoice layout. So that holds true for any document that sits inside of accounts receivable. They can reprint them anytime they want, past or current documents. So that's the document view. The pay account one was honestly, which is probably why most people would acquire the portal, is for customers to pay their invoices online. And so what this does is exposes any open invoice that sits inside of Sage 300 for that customer. And when I click that pay button, you notice again, we turned on that edit field, which is your option to keep that on or turn that off. If you just click on that line, it will sort of explode it out so you can see the line items on there just for a quick view to make sure that, excuse me, that's the one they wanted to pay. When they hit that make payment button, this exposes a couple of different things here. So number one, we do have the option of storing a card token. And that's that masked credit card number that we're all familiar with, right? You want to see the last three digits or whatever name you gave it to store. And so we can store these if the customer requests us to do so, so that when they come on to make payments periodically, they don't have to enter their card details every time. They simply hit that make payment button. Next thing that happens is we're going to run out, get the payment details from the gateway, bring it back, post it into Sage. They get an on-screen receipt. At the same time as that on-screen receipt gets presented, we send an email again to that AR email address that sits inside of accounts receivable that they paid it, what they paid, how much they paid. Simultaneously, internally, you get messaging. So you can get an email, can go to a distribution list or to a specific email address if you want one person to get it. It can go to a Microsoft Teams team. So anybody that you want to be notified that this payment happened, they will get that. And it'll be instantaneous. And the same for Slack. We integrate to both Teams and Slack so that you can get instant notifications that this has happened. And so in the back end, again, you tell us what you want to be notified about and who needs to get notified in those Teams or Slack channels or by email. So that's kind of cool. I like that feature, and a lot of people really like that, because if you happen to be involved in a collection proceeding with a customer and they paid, you want to know that they paid. So you get that instant notification that they've done that. So you can pay by ACH or e-check, and you can actually use a new card, and they can opt to save that new card if they want to. And what happens is, and this is kind of important here, when we ask a customer to enter their card details, what we're doing is we're popping up the payment processor gateway here. So the portal has temporarily farmed this transaction out to the secure vault of the payment processor. So the portal itself never touches that card, and you by extension never touch that card. So we are all sidestepping the whole PCI compliance issue. So Evo Payments, who is our parent company, goes through full PCI compliance audits every year. They maintain the highest levels of security. So they're a payment processor. That's what they do every day. So this is all in their domain now. So when we enter those card details, that's where they go. And if they choose to store them, they store them on their virtual terminal in their vault system. All we ever get is that token, right, that we saw before, that mask card number. That's all we ever get. And so neither of us, either the portal nor you guys, ever has any PCI compliance issues. Well, that's the payment side of things. And if it was an ACH transaction, you just enter the transit number, the branch number, a bank account number, all that stuff, and this kind of the same thing happens. It's a little different on an ACH process. However, when we get a credit card transaction, they tell us, you know, if you got the money, you got the money, it's yours. In an ACH transaction, the only feedback we get from the bank is, yeah, we got your request. You kind of have to wait till the money shows up into your bank account to know if they actually entered correct information. So that's not a fault of the portal or anything else. That's just the feedback that we get from the bank and whatever the customer put in there. Hopefully that improves over time. Hopefully the messaging that comes back from the bank gets to be a little bit better, and we can control that better. That's what we're living with today. Anyway, not a big deal, because in most cases, they're just paying an existing invoice. They're not necessarily ordering products, so you're not going to be out product and didn't get paid, right? So the risk level is pretty low on those things. The prepayment side of things, I mentioned that we can take a prepayment on an order, we can take a prepayment on a quote, or we can take an unallocated cash payment on the account that will just sit there for you to apply at some point in the future, and that's up to you. So that's the three different types of prepayment we can get. And on the managed credit cards, this just tells them which cards that they've got stored with us, or which card tokens they've got stored with us that they can reuse. And if they choose to delete it, we just mark it as inactive, and it doesn't show up here anymore, so that they can't use that. And they could have multiples in here if they choose to do so. The order side of things has a couple of cool features that are worth pointing out. So we do support all the different order types inside of Sage 300, so active, future, standing, and quotes. And you can make kind of interesting use of quotes if you want to. And you'll notice on the screen here, we've got some quote documents, some order documents. We've got some that are approved, some are waiting for approval. So this kind of goes hand in hand with our sort of order entry thing, where we can actually have a customer submit for a quote or for an order. And so you may have a couple of different scenarios how this might work, at least in my mind, where you might have a situation where internally, let's say one of your staff members creates a quote for a customer. And when it's ready to go, they just throw it out onto the screen here, and the customer can have a look at that, and they can see, you know, what I've wanted to order, how much, and it's going to be for. That's an approved quote because it's one of my staff members that did it. I know it's okay. If the customer likes what they see, they can click that button, and they can turn that into an active order. And that's going to end up directly into Sage as an active order, either on hold or ready to fulfill, your choice as well as to how those go in there. And when an order goes into Sage, it goes in flagged as by electronic commerce and who the user was on the portal who made that order. That sits right on the order entry screen, so you can always see where these orders are coming from. Another scenario where this might work is if a customer is using this order entry screen, and I'll show you that in just a second, and they decided to just, you know, request a quote, they could send that quote into the system, and then one of your staff can review that. So that's where this is sitting, waiting for approval, right? It hasn't been approved yet. Somebody internally has not reviewed it, and we're not ready to approve that quote that the customer can fulfill it. So customer submits the request for a quote. Somebody internally reviews that, makes any corrections that are necessary, and then approves that quote. Then it comes into this status. So that's kind of the other scenario that might work there. So rather than your staff initiating the process, the customer does it. So they wanted to make a quote, somebody reviews it, they approve it, customer then can now come in here and turn it into an active order if they want to do so. So that's the whole quote thing. Oh, and incidentally, you can look at this by order or you can look at this by item. So this means these are all the items that I'm still waiting for you to ship to me as a customer. And here's the orders that they sit on. And you can, again, drill down onto these orders as well, just like we did with that invoice document. Let's take a quick look at the order entry side of things. So this is, oh, and incidentally, I should mention that we work just as well on any device. It could be a large screen or it can be a mobile device. And we don't just squash down the display, we actually reorganize the screen. We move things around, we make it usable regardless of what device that they happen to be on. And that holds true with every screen in the customer portal. It has to be usable on a mobile device by anyone, anywhere, anytime. And that's how we've designed it. So all the screens adapt to the device that the customer is using. And again, remember, we don't have any data here, but we are logged in. So the portal does have context. It knows who this customer is. It knows what terms have been granted, and it knows what products exist on its price list because that's what's set up in Sage, and that's what we're honoring. So for instance, we know what his ship to addresses are, or he can enter a new one if he chooses to do so. They can enter a PO number, request a delivery date, and some of these things you can turn on and off, provide us with some comments or shipping instructions. But where the interesting stuff comes in is down in this section down here. So, and again, because we don't have any data in the portal itself, we have to request it. So let's say I'm going to order a calculator. I type in at least 3 letters or characters, hit the enter key or that finder, and now we just ran out to Sage and brought back everything that satisfied that request. So in our case, what we're searching on, the fields we're searching on are the item number. So all these guys up here, the description, and any of those 4 additional item information fields that exist inside of inventory control, we're also searching those. And I believe, yes, we can also search the customer item number if you happen to be maintaining that, because sometimes your customers have their own item numbers that are different from your item numbers. So we can search all of those fields. And once I know what I want to get, I just click on that. And the way I've got this, you probably saw me check that box off. This is just going to be a quick order entry type thing, right? I just pick my quantity and go. Incidentally, we call it a salesperson login. It could be any internal employee. You have the option to allow price override. So we would make that an editable field so that they can change that if you give your staff the ability to negotiate. Probably not a good idea to turn that on for a customer, but salespeople, sure, maybe that makes sense. So I'm a customer, I'm doing a stock replenishment order. Let's say I have a pretty good idea what I want, either by its description or by its item number. I just type it away. How many do I want? Bang, 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 hit place order or place quote. And again, you turn these on and off at your discretion. Whichever ones you want to expose is up to you. And then bang, I'm done. The order is inside of Sage now, ready for either on hold, for you to review, or ready to fulfill. Generally, people like to bring them in on hold so they can review them to make sure somebody didn't do something goofy, like they typed in 1,000 when they meant 10 or something like that, right? So oftentimes folks want to review them before they release them. But again, we flag them all with a reference field that says they were by electronic commerce. So it's easy for you to find them when you just use your finder and say, look for all orders that came by electronic commerce that are sitting in here on hold. You'll get your list. You can quickly review them. You can easily release them. So it's pretty easy to find out the ones that need attention. So another level of, I guess, detail that we can add to this is if I turn on the show item details and I do the same thing, I can now display more information than just typing in line by line. And I can never remember which one has the detail I need. So let's try that guy. So here I can actually, so this bit here, this is where those 4 additional item information lines would be. I've only got 1 here, of course, but that's where they would display. So any of that will show here. And we can also show images, and we can have multiple images here if we like, and they would just scroll through them. So in a situation where somebody wasn't entirely sure that this was the thing they wanted, they just needed some reinforcement that that was the right thing, you can do this and actually add those items onto that order as well. And again, when they hit that place order or place quote, fires it directly into Sage. It's live at that point in time, either on hold or ready to fulfill. That's your choice to make and how you would switch that on or off. And I think that kind of rounds out what the customer facing side of things is. And again, this is an option. The payment side is an option, but the standard portal is the baseline that you have to have. 99% of the time, folks are getting the standard portal with the payment part of it. Whether you accept prepayment or not, again, your choice. Lots of things you can turn on and off on the system here, and we control all of that in the back end. So I don't see any questions in the Q&A at the moment. So let me pop into the admin side and show you what that looks like. It's the same login screen, but as the administrator or the owner of the portal, you get a different view. So the first thing you're going to see is a bit of a dashboard that tells you what's going on your portal. So number one, how much money am I getting through my portal today, month to date, year to date, last year, and either by the total number of transactions or the dollar amount. And that's all displayed here as well. So the graphs are kind of just a little bit of window dressing. This tells you how many people or customers are actually using the portal. So remember I said you can have more than one user for any one AR customer. So it tells me how many users and how many AR customers are actually using the portal. And again, same time frames. This bit down here should be 0. Because we read and feed directly into Sage 300, these are payments that are being inserted into an AR receipt batch. And this is telling me that I had 3 that I couldn't insert. Chances are very slim that that will happen because we had to have live access when the customer requested the invoice to pay it. And by the time we ran out to that gateway and brought the payment back and tried to insert it, we would have had to have lost connection. Pretty slim chance that that's going to happen, but the possibility does exist. So we had to accommodate for that. And that's what this is telling us. I see a question came through here. Can they pay a bill without creating an account, without registering? So there does need to be an AR account. Obviously, you have to have something to process against, but the click to pay will allow them to do that. And give me time at the end, actually, and I'll touch on that again once I get through this. But there's either on the login screen, they can just click pay invoice, they just enter their invoice number, their account number and pay it, or the click to pay link that you can insert on the invoice document. A couple of different ways that can happen. But I'll try and show you that at the end again. Please remind me if I forget. So that's the first sort of dashboard that you get when you log in as the administrator. This is where all the customers are controlled. Oh, you remember I talked about that broadcast message that goes out to everybody? This is where you control that. So you can set start and end dates. You can reset it here to turn that on again. So when they log in, they're going to see it again. That's up to you. This is where you control all those users. So if you remember at the very beginning when I said you can grant somebody immediate access if they answered the question correctly when they logged in, this is where you can actually turn them off if the AR folks said, no, I don't want that person to have access. You just turn them off here. And also at the very beginning, I said, if you want to control all the users that get added, you can do so here. And there's those 3 types we mentioned, right? There's the typical user, that's the stuff we just went through, the customer facing stuff, the merchant, which is what we're looking at right now. And then the salesperson, if you recall, I said we could create a salesperson login and they could have price override on the order entry screen. That's that type of a user. So that's those 3 types of users that you can create. And great filter capabilities here, so you can always find somebody in here by any of these filter criteria. So it's a very, very handy feature to have. The receipt side of things is also a good feature. Now this is all going to be available through the virtual terminal of the Evo account that you would have. But this is also the portal tracking all the payments that have been made or attempted to be made. Now, this is me starting a transaction but not finishing it, right? And it's telling me that. So if a customer ever called up and said, you know, I went on and made a payment, but I don't see it. Well, here you go. You didn't finish it. You started, but you didn't finish it. Here's a completed transaction here. It's been approved. That little flag there says it's been inserted into Sage, so you know that's done. This whole transaction should be complete. And it comes with the auth codes and everything else that you would get back from the payment gateway. So you know that transaction's done. And again, lots of filter capabilities here so that if somebody ever called you up and said, I made a payment, I can't find it, you can search for them by any of these filter criteria here. So that's the payment side of things. And here's all that setup stuff I talked about in the very beginning. So those, remember the 5 skill testing questions I said we could ask and grant them immediate access? Here's where you control them. So these are the questions that you can ask that they have to know in order to allow that auto approval to work. So we allow self-registrations and we allow auto approval. So that's where you turn those things on and off. And incidentally, you can turn your whole portal off just by clicking this thing on. And this flag here, there is a, I think there's a checkbox or a flag sitting inside of the AR account that says allow on web. If you want to control which customers have access by that flag, you just turn this guy on. And this is where you just point to the new file. This is where I want my logo to be. I want to update it with some new messaging or whatever. Just click there. That's where it is. All your welcome message, all that stuff you control right here. Pretty simple stuff. And actually, all of this stuff is dead easy for you to control. So remember in the beginning, I said you have 3 different subscription levels. And if you have them all turned on, all of these will be available. But you can, at your option, turn these things on and off. You don't have to show everything to all your customers. You can determine which features and functions that you want available to them. So that's going to determine the icons that show up or the menu items that appeared across the top, which is just a menu of the icon as opposed to the icon view. Here's the prepayments you want to take. Here's the document types that you want to display. And again, I said, if you don't charge interest, just don't show it. Check it off here. It does not show up. Same holds true for any of these documents. And this is just where you're going to tell us what the domain name is of your portal. And company information, that's pretty basic, nothing too earth-shattering in there. Payment processing is just where you set up your merchant accounts. That's pretty straightforward. The notifications is kind of the cool one that I like, because this is where you tell us who you want to be informed of what and how. So, you know, the technical contact, if for some reason we cannot connect, and 99% of the time it's because I talked about that connect component, either it's got turned off or there's no user license available for us to access. But we need to let somebody know that we can't connect, because when a customer tries to log in, and they can't, and we can't get access to Sage, we have to display an error message that says, sorry, try again later. But at the same time, we're going to inform you internally that we can't connect to your system, something's wrong, please go check it out. So who do we tell? So that's your tech contact, either by email or by Slack or by Microsoft Teams. And these webhooks are dead simple to set up, and we have knowledge base articles that tell you how to do all this stuff. And so you tell us which ones to turn on and off. Same holds true on the AR side of things. So you remember I said when somebody makes a payment, who do we need to tell? So the customer gets their receipt, but who internally needs to know that somebody has made a payment on their account? So what's that email address? Who's the Slack channel? You know, what's the Microsoft Teams? And include all the payment details that went through there. What did they pay? How much? Who was it? All that good stuff. And again, you turn that stuff on and off here. New user registered. Who do I tell? And by what? By what method? Payment received. Somebody tried to do a transaction, but they didn't complete it. So all that stuff, we can inform you that something's happened or didn't happen, and you know, maybe there's something you have to action on that. And the same with the order entry side of things as well. So not only does the order end up inside of Sage order entry, you can also get notified, or somebody on your side or some team or some group of people can be notified that this order was placed. So if you got a situation, let's say, where the orders are coming in on hold, and maybe it was a particularly big order and you want someone to jump on that right now as opposed to maybe tomorrow morning when you normally do it. Well, this is a great way for folks to get informed. New order came in, jump on it right now, take care of it, get it approved, do whatever you need to do. And that we can inform them by all those same methods. And then there's that basic contact us form that you typically saw on the front end, sorry, at the very beginning when I said this is the basic stuff. There's a contact us. Who do you want that to go to? And what do you want to tell them when they submit that form? And the customer notifications, that kind of thing. That's all where that stuff lives. And on the order entry side of things, there's lots of switches in here that you can turn on and off. Do you want to just allow the selling unit of measure? Do you want them to go in on hold, miscellaneous charges, salesperson price override? How do you want the orders posted as quotes or orders? So all this kind of stuff you set up in here. Once you set it up, again, you don't have to babysit this, because once you get these settings done, the chances of you having to log into the back end here are pretty slim. For the most part, I don't think our customers log in here much at all. Maybe the odd time to change something like, I don't know, the image or the message or something like that. But for the most part, as long as Connect is running and we have a user license available, it just does what it does, and there's not much you have to do with this. So kind of set and forget. You set it up, let it go, and it does its thing. So that's, you know, a very quick overview of what the customer portal is, both from the customer facing side and from the merchant side. That's what you get to see and you get to control. Let me just pop back here and show Ashley what this looked like. So you see this bit here, this pay invoice button. So without requesting, having somebody to log in or create an account on the portal, they can simply come in here. My customer number is X. I want to pay this much money and hit pay now. We're going to go and check Sage first, make sure that that is a correct invoice number for that customer and that there is still a balance outstanding on that. So let me see what I got. Customer. Ooh, I got to remember 16. No, I can't remember what the invoice number is. Sorry, it's on my click to pay document here. Let's have a look at that. So this is my invoice number for customer. I can't remember. Is it 1200? It's going to be a bit of a crapshoot here to see if I get this right, but let's try. It's 1400 actually. Let's see. No. See, this is the error message that they will get if they try to enter something that's not correct. Maybe it's 1200. That one. Nope. Can't remember the customer number associated with that click to pay. So anyway, this is how they can do that without having to log in. Or it's that click to pay link. Actually, if you missed this in the beginning, you just embed this in your invoice document. See that link that's popped up there? Just points to your portal with the customer number, with the document number. They click on that. It pops up a screen that allows them to pay that invoice document, and that's it. So it doesn't need them to log in, but that's all they can do here. Oh, it's 1500. There you go. So this is all they can do here. They can't log into the rest of the portal and see any of that other stuff because we haven't asked them to log in. So this is all we're going to allow them to do. Hope that answered that question. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, let me just wrap things up here. So this is the pricing for the product. And again, this comes directly from Sage in the Sage 300 world in North America. So if you're a customer using Sage 300 and you're interested, contact your Sage partner or get in touch with us and we'll sort of get the ball rolling for you. Here's the price, excuse me, here's the pricing for the various things. There is a one-time setup fee. That just gets your instance established in our data center. And then again, remember, we do require that Sage user license. Do bear that in mind. And we do need access to your system through your firewall. And this is the various options that you have at your disposal. And for the pricing, US pricing is the big one. Canadian pricing is the small one. If you're international, we would use the US pricing. So that is everything about the customer portal. And if you have requirements to go a bit beyond that, and you're in the Sage 300 world, you require a web store. We do have a fully integrated web store that shares all of your product information and customer information, and means you only have one data source to control all of this stuff, and it just shares that data back and forth automatically. Let's have a chat. We can certainly deal with that. Customer portal is often a great way to get started. And then move your way into a full-on web store if you want to do that, because the portal can be set up very quickly and it does take us a bit of time to build out a web store for you. So that's it. Any further questions before I let you go? We have another question coming. Incidentally, I will have this recording available. If anyone needs a copy of it, let me know. I'll probably post it on our YouTube channel and you can gain access to it that way, but just fire me off an email and I'll make sure you get access to it. Just waiting for the question to be typed here, so bear with us for a second. While we're waiting, does anybody else have a question? Back up there, my contact information up there. Incidentally, my email address is peter@north49.com. So if you want to get in touch with me directly, please do so. My extension with that toll-free number is 6005. Feel free to give me a call as well if I can answer any questions. And if you'd like to get, if you're a Sage partner and you'd like me to present to your specific customers, happy to do so. We do one-on-one stuff all the time. Or if you'd like us to present to your internal staff, do that as well. If you're a Sage customer and need further explanation or dig a little deeper on any of this stuff, just get in touch and I'm happy to do that as well. So I'm still waiting to see a question. Oh, here we go. Pardon me. Yeah, so you've got a number of Sage licenses available, but you only ever use 2. We do recommend dedicating one to us. Now, if there's always one available, that's not going to be a big deal. And again, mentioned earlier, the later versions of Sage 300 do allow you to reserve a user license for a particular user. That's what we recommend. If you've got enough licenses, great. Then you don't have to go out and get another one. So that should be just fine. Sharing one, often not recommended, because if a customer tries to log in and we don't have a license available, we're going to give them an error message that says, sorry, try again later. You want to avoid that as much as possible, I think, because the whole point of self-service is customers can do it when they want. And so if they keep getting an error message, they're just not going to use the portal, and you're kind of defeating the purpose of deploying it. So our recommendation is make sure that there's one available to us all the time, because we will take it and we will hold it. We won't let it go as long as we're using it, and we do block the port in your firewall as we're using that as well. So there's no security issues. We've been through the penetration testing with Sage in order to be to be considered an endorsed product. So very secure product. Anyway, long story short, we strongly recommend that you dedicate a user license to the portal if you're going to deploy it. Any other questions before I let you go? All right, looks like we've come to the end of the question. So thank you very much for joining. Do appreciate you taking the time. If you want to get more information, please reach out. Happy to answer any questions, either by email, by telephone, however you want to reach us. We even have a chat function on our website, so we'll get in touch one way or another, however you prefer to communicate. So thank you again, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day.